So thank you, Dinah, for also emphasizing that nothing is off the table. So I hope we can have very frank discussions, because there's enough gyan out there. And really, my job as moderator is not to be a timekeeper, I hope. I mean, we may need a little of that, let's see. But really to figure out what is working and not working and where the gaps are, because ultimately this space is an ecosystem. And it's not about technology as a drop-in. It's not about just the right laws, because you have to follow them as well. And it's amusing, because if you compare the US and India, US regulators are often have a mix of staff, but especially legal experts, people with legal backgrounds like yourself and yourself as well. And that's been often missing in the Indian case. And the Indian case has had a lot of technocrats, technical, some economics or policy, but not all of them in alignment always. And so that's one of the things that I think is a lesson we can learn from the US. And when I started I went helping the government, 2010 set up Smart Grid Forum and other bodies. It was always, what is a smart grid? Then we've overcome that. Why do we need smart grid? We've mostly overcome that as well. Now we're trying to do, how do we do it? And that's where we are. And that now comes back to this session, which is, what is this future going to look like? Is a smart a reaction to the change or an enabler of the change? How do these two fit together? And there are some lessons, I think, two-way this conversation between US and India. You mentioned of so many programs where the US has helped. Sparks is one of them now, dealing with the smart space specifically under USAID. Full disclosure, I've been involved with some of these programs, including CEF. The US is a federal structure like India. That's probably one of the key things when we look at electricity in India, is the federal nature of center and state. What has worked and what has not worked? As someone once pointed out, let's make new mistakes. No one's going to get it right, because this isn't cookie cutter. This isn't just an execution problem. There are design issues, choices to be made of how we design our market structures, our regulatory structures. Even technology doesn't operate in a vacuum. This is another lesson I share with my friends from the tech world. There's a, for lack of better phrase, Silicon Valley view of the world. No offense, hey, to our technologists sitting in Silicon Valley. That technology will solve all the problems if only the damn government would get out of the way. But it's not so simple. And really, we get magic that happens when technology and policies align, the incentives align. So tariffs, that's just one of the many things we have to make it worthwhile. We're the after lunch session. I'll shut up in just a second and hand over to wake people up. How many of you, okay, let's do it the other way. Request everyone in the audience to raise their hands. And now put your hands down if you have heard of the utility death spiral. Okay, so there's still a few people. And so this is really the real key issue. When we look at change, it's not only change for a generator, change for transmission, but change especially for the discoms. And in the Indian case, that is where the rubber hits the road, or as some people would joke, sometimes fails to. So we've heard a lot of buzzwords, the 3 Ds, digitalization, decentralization, decarbonization. What does that really mean? India is important for many reasons, and it's a bilateral engagement with the US. It is large, so if the world cares about both development and carbon, what India does matters. India is an enormous market, let us not forget that. India's ambitious renewable targets between announcement to 2022 were a 25% annual growth in RE. That's huge. Even California, with their relatively ambitious target, is a much lower percentage on a year-on-year basis. So this is clearly an opportunity, but it's also a place to try new models because things are moving so fast. And so I would now request all our speakers to share very brief opening remarks with or without slides as you see fit. And then we can have some discussion. I have a few just general questions on what's real, what's not, what's working, what isn't, and what are the levers where policy, innovation, experimentation, risk-taking can really change the game. Because otherwise there is a trajectory. It's do what you did before, just speed it up. Sure, that's one way of doing things. But I would like to think that's not the only way. So I'm delighted to have a very distinguished set of and I'm going to start requesting Honorable Neil Chatterjee to share his remarks. Yes.